Recording is on.
You want to do an intro?
You go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here. What is this call about?
UX research, user scenarios.
Awesome, thank you. So, well, hi everyone, and hi everyone who's listening. We're just started a little bit before the recording, and we're just going around doing introductions. So I'm Christoph, and I'm basically full-time in the design community, and I just try to help out wherever I can. And sometimes I join calls just to remind them to record them, which I did here. So now I'm done, and I will leave now. I'm just kidding. So no, I'm here. I'm just here to listen and learn with stories. A lot of these. Hi, Georgia. We're just going around saying hi and saying why we're here. So I was just making a goofy comment and just saying I'm here to listen and learn. Because I know all these words, but I've just never had intense experience with them. And Georgia, you'll be proud of me, just for you here. I brought a lock and a lock picking set because I know that's your hobby. So, you know, maybe you do the same, like you pick locks while you're on the call. As you told me that you do sometimes.
Yeah, I do sometimes. Let me show you. I bought a vise for holding my locks, and
ooh, nice.
applying tape to the locks so I can't see the internal mechanisms as well.
Ah, nice. Pro.
Really preparing for the fourth turning over here. Really,
This cannot get more interesting.
all the skills needed. Yeah.
Georgia, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
For you, Michael.
Hi, everybody. I'm Georgia Rackison. I live in the UK, and I work in Web3 as a user researcher. And I thought I would drop into this call. Mo invited me, but it's nice to be here. I just want to hear what people are working on, what their thoughts and questions are, and see if I can contribute in some way. So that's why I'm here.
Nice.
Cool. Hi, I'm Bumi. I'm more a software engineer, developer. So same as Christoph, I would say I'm here to learn. Working with Diana on Albi, and I'm excited to see like all the UX and design topics. To learn how to make the products usable in the end.
Yeah, I've Andrew and Diana have very kindly offered to share with us. Diana's created user stories for Albi, so something very practical. So she's offered to share with us how she's done that. And Andrew has also created quite a mega Figma file where he's going to talk us through some ideas that he has, which are also outside user stories as well. So whoever wants to begin, feel free to share your screen, and we can begin.
Up to you, Diana.
Sure. Then I can be first, and then you can show your mega Figma file, because I'm super curious about that. We have also quite an extensive Figma file, but I'm sure we have a lot to learn from each other. So I will just tell our story of how we did the user scenarios. Let me open my notes. So I joined Albi when we already had the MVP, and I've basically dug through the existing product to create Figma components and to bring everything to speed with the design. And we didn't create user stories at the beginning. I spent some time inside the product to identify key scenarios together with the testing contributor. So we had a girl who was very interested in coming and helping with testing. And in order for her to structure her work as well as my redesign work, we sat together and we went through all screens one by one, creating scenarios from onboarding to key features, sending, receiving, paying invoices, creating invoices, all of those. And we've created about 30 of the scenarios. that we then started putting into the, now I'll share my screen. So this is an example of, say, onboarding screen. We wrote down all the words for onboarding for a specific case with a new user for a new wallet. And we went through screens, documented those, and then put down all the different cases where different users can be separated into different categories. So it could be users who had wallets before, who didn't have wallets before. And we've identified a few issues with the scenario, the main being that it ends with an error message. So what happened was, at the beginning, we had an initiative to give users some of the Satoshi to test out the wallet. And then because of the attack, we took that down. But in the scenarios, we kept the demo that required them to pay 25 Satoshi as a test. So working through the scenarios, working through how it would be best for users to onboard, we asked the questions of who's the new user, how to be, what is the success for our users, where the onboarding stops and where other scenarios start. And working through those, we made a list of wireframes that made some changes to the Albi end screen for this scenario in particular. So our users should end their onboarding with a option to get funds on their wallet, buy or make a transfer from another wallet, or to connect with the service that they will be gaining income from. So connect their node or their blog, etc., etc., and to give them options to go and learn on how to spend the money from the wallet. So this is our case with the scenarios, and we will be tackling it by going into the existing product and creating wireframes, graphics, block schematics. Sorry, the Russian word keeps popping in my head. Flowcharts in English on how in each scenario journeys can differ. So that's what I wanted to share. Maybe I missed something because I'm a little nervous. Maybe. Yeah, who it is important to who is it important to have user scenarios. So the business uses user scenarios to prioritize goals and prioritize features within the team. Designers use it to validate their work. Developers use them to see the helicopter view of features that they're developing, so they're in context and they understand how users are going through the features to get to their preferred results. And then testers use it to validate devs' work. So from what I see, what I know, user scenarios are centered to a lot of processes in the company, and we're now working on identifying those, making them available. We've posted them on GitHub for everyone to see and comment on, and we're slowly going through them and working our way to best user results. And I'm done.
That's super cool to see. I just shared an issue, and I think that's the one you're referring to, right? With the list of test cases. Is that right? Or scenarios? And I had a question around that. So you have this long list.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion that I see happening is sometimes it's our fringe scenarios, or in certain situations somebody does this and then that and then this and that. They come back 3 days later and then do this and that, and then somebody else does something. Then this happens, which is a fringe scenario, and it's kind of but these sometimes take over the conversation. With these stories and scenarios, do you have you thought or done, or is there of a method to kind of add some more metadata to each one, like 50% of users go through this and only 1% go through this, and just to provide some context around, because otherwise it's a really long list of stuff.
Yeah. So we have a session planned with the team to go over them together and see who has input on adding this metadata to the tickets. So it's not just one by one. It's from what we've been working so far. So I've been on the team for 2 months now, and what we've been working on in this time was onboarding and key user journeys that are send and receive funds and get funds on the wallet. So those that are from the discussions we had are the key features of the app. Others will be then refined with the rest of the team.
Very nicely done. Does anyone have any questions for Diana before we move on to Andrew?
Could you talk more about the attack? I'm curious. What happened?
I give away free sats to new accounts. I mean, it's bound to happen,
Yeah. No. But has a large amount of money been drained, or was it contained?
That happened on the first day of me coming to the public call, and I heard that on my first day. So I think Boomi will have more info on that if he's willing to share.
It was more of an annoyance. Not. I mean, there was all the limits in place, and it was more of an annoyance that just new users couldn't use the functionality.
Yeah.
And it was a combination of like a general denial of service attack.
Oh.
And the denial of service attack actually lasted for like 2 days. And it was really targeted. So they were contacting us on Twitter and Telegram and saying, okay, hey, please pay us, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000, and we stop. And we were like, I mean, we didn't answer. We just, we were not ready yet for this denial of service attack amount. And yeah, in terms of the small faucet that we had, it was like we had these, I mean, we were expecting that people were trying to trick it and trying to write scripts. So we had all these limitations in place. So that was not much of a problem. It was just an annoyance. And the annoyance led to that we had to disable that. But as Diana said, like, it's still annoying for the new users because the flow was still expecting that people can get these sets and can play around with it directly.
Okay. And another question to Diana: what time is it necessary for you to draw each one of these scenarios that you've shown on the list? So do you imagine how? Yeah, because I'm taking a look at the list and trying to just wonder how much work each one of these points.
So my estimate is on average to work through one scenario a day. Some will take more, some will take less. Some of them overlap. But I think within a month and a half, together with the team and communal input, we will be able to work through all of them and make amendments, at least wireframe suggestions on each one of them if they need adjusting.
Have you found a way to do this in like an open design way where some casual contributors can take chunks and work on them or help out or give feedback?
At the moment, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still trying to find my way of working with the community. I find it easier to work with UI people when I can forward the mockups, the UX mockups, and they can work on the UI because of the context and because of the goals. So we're still adjusting our long-term goals. So I don't know how to onboard the contributors in the best way. So I'm right now working on a funnel where we would have all the design documentation, company values, something like a white paper for designers that would explain the values of the product, the goals of the company, the goals of the team, and hopefully by the time we have this funnel ready, then we can delegate some of the work to the broader community. Right now, I didn't get much success delegating issues to contributors. They just run off, to be frank.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about incentives for the people to engage in this kind of work, and maybe something like a certificate from the company or something like that can be very useful for people that are trying to dip their toes in the UX and UI design industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've tried different attempts. We've tried just recognition. We've tried setting up cases where they would have 2-week sprints, and then they would have a piece of work that they can put in their portfolio. We've also tried future job perspectives. We're now working with new contributors and hoping that something will come out of that. But the difficult part I find is that it takes a lot of effort from the team to manage work, and a lot of times they need several levels of revision, several rounds of revision in order to be usable. And you sometimes won't be able to manage a lot of them without compromising your own work. So trying to figure that out, trying to make a tunnel where people who are really determined and really looking to be proactive and find their own work would thrive. We're not the design school. So that's that. Sorry if I'm being harsh. It's a painful point you're pressing.
It's point. And I think like most of open source is dealing with that, design and development and all that. And it is tricky. You want to be completely open and make it so everybody can come in and chime in. And but for the final product, somebody has to say what goes in and what doesn't. Somebody just has to make the decision. And that's kind of the harsh part. And there are like multiple layers to this. Initially, when I talked to some people at a Bitcoin meetup, I asked them like, well, what do you, do you contribute anything? They're like, yeah, I help review, and sometimes I look at the code and I'm like, does that do anything? But only much later I realized, yeah, that's actually super important. That all these people sometimes show up and leave some comments, and some are useful, some are not, and out of all of that you kind of have to shape that product little by little. But yeah, it's messy, and it will remain messy, I think. Just have to work with that the best you can.
I think for us it's really important to start building a culture where it is where people don't want to post shit design into GitHub. Hopefully, we can manage to build something that where people would try to be as nice in their work as possible. But dream big, I guess. Dream big.
Yeah, we're trying to do something similar with the new Bitcoin Core app. And one approach I'm taking there, and I'm just posting a link, is to just try to have good design documentation and have a really nice organized Figma file. So this is all work in progress stuff. But the theory is that if you document it well and you have a super nice Figma file, people will take that and build on top of it. You know, they can still destroy it and make something horrendous, but it's easier to make something nice with it.
Yeah, we take the same approach. We make our libraries public. We have all the designs, the current designs, the working files for different issues, and yeah, hopefully people can run with it and do something beautiful or useful.
I feel like this is a whole call on its own, this topic, because I know Christoph has a lot of experience in this particular topic. And I think a lot of people are also really interested in it, particularly, Andrew's also nodding his head, particularly with the open source contributions. So
yeah, I was looking over, I have the book Working in Public, I think it's called, right? The FOSS sort of, I don't know, handbook, I guess. And yeah, a similar thing that we are continually trying to be better at. One thing that it just made me think about is like, well, and I'll get into this a little later, but like I come from sort of digital agency world. We have like 30-person teams. And so when I was in that world, I was trying to be like, we need less people working on a thing at the same time. But in the sort of open source contributor world, it's like, do you pair people together? Do you create a pod? Do you create some accountability and some like back and forth so that the work that comes out of that, those individuals really is checked, maybe before it gets to you. Yeah, a lot of thoughts, a lot of opportunity. I'm excited about, learning from Christoph and working with, Diana and other people who are trying to crack this issue.
I think we'll definitely have a call on that. I'm not sure about you, Christoph, but it feels definitely like that's quite an interesting topic, how to manage these open source contributions, just kind of feel into how everyone else is doing it, what's working, what's not working.
You make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't. I'm just making it up.
You know what you're talking about. You do know what you're talking about. That's a call on its own. It would be nice to hear from everyone. But Andrew, are you happy to present? Is everyone okay with that? Cool.
Sure. Oh, wait, let's let Jacob hop up.
Yep, Jacob needs to speak.
I know, it was by accident, so go ahead.
Oh, we were talking about this in a meeting yesterday, how bad the UI is, where like if you want to get to an emoji, you have to like dance around the hand raising icon, which triggers everybody's notifications. As a user, I want to clap without raising my hand. Yeah, I'm happy to share. This will be a little bit maybe different. Diana, that was awesome, and I'm excited to kind of dig into some of the work you shared. I will share now. Let's see. And give you a little bit of context before I take us on a bit of a windy road, maybe. Oh yeah, and also Mo shared the. All right. Okay. I'm just gonna assume you all can see my screen. Let me know if you can't. So I'm Andrew. I work at Galloway. More in a marketing. I mean, I'm on the non-technical team. There's only a few of us, and so we do the responsibilities that we take on spans pretty broadly, but more specifically marketing, content creation, community sort of engagement, stuff like that. Galloway builds open source Bitcoin banking software. So we built the Bitcoin Beach wallet. There's a wallet called Bitcoin Jungle, which is built on the Galloway stack, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a dad. I'm in New England. I'm in Rhode Island. But I think that the interesting, or the reason why I'm here is really sort of some of my past experience. So I worked in digital marketing agencies. So Digitas, Mirum are two that are sort of larger, and then a few small ones. Worked in big bank, big tech, big healthcare, like on all sorts of things in experience strategy capacity. And so what that means is, right, like I was often either partnering with UX research or doing UX research, or really being the first person to say like, okay, are we going to build a product, or are we going to evolve a product, etc. And so when I saw last week's or the initial UX research call, I kind of just started hopping in the chat because I was excited to connect with all you all on these topics. So personas, jobs to be done, user stories, etc. And so I guess one of the things I wanted to do was to pull forward some of previous work to give a little, I don't know, just share some of my experiences. I apparently I didn't even take it when I left the fiat world. And so I just left it behind. And so I don't have it. So what I did was I went into my inspiration folder and I just pulled some things forward to set context. This is why I left the agency world. Because I felt like the little UX on the anglerfish, the little light that was attracting people to shitty business models. And I wanted to use my skills for good. And so, I think a lot of us that come to Bitcoin, they say like, okay, how can I best help? I think one of the ways that I could help is, some of the things that I'll share might be interesting to some of you, and I'm happy to like help, go through any of them in greater detail later. So I'll do it. This is going to be a bit of a I think just a high level walkthrough of some of maybe the beliefs that I have landed on over a decade or whatever of doing some of these different types of projects for some different types of companies, and then we can have a discussion around that. And so again, I went to my inspiration folder, air quote that because it's pretty funny like this. I always chuckle when UX designers talk about journeys. People are paying their phone bill, not getting to fucking Mortar. Take it down a notch. Like this is one of my favorite tweets of all time because I have seen and done probably some like UX research that goes like maybe beyond what is useful to get past your immediate goal. And then maybe this is a bit of a sort of a walk into the call number one around personas. But Alan Cooper created a design agency called Cooper. I think it has since been acquired, but it was really, in my sort of view, one of the better like interaction design agencies. And so I liked, I always kind of pulled forward some of the things that he said and tested it and validated it and kind of believed some of his perspective. And I think I saw this in some notes from last week around, personas are discovered in the field, right? This is based on research that you're getting. They have goals, they have motivations, they have a name. Use their name, right? Like they are people. We are designing a solution. We're making a persona happy. And the other one here that I always liked is that personas are buckets for holding your research and analysis, right? And so it's like a good place, almost like a magnifying glass where you're like, focusing the sun's energy. Like you have a ton of research, thousands of pages or whatever, sometimes. And like a persona is a way to communicate everything you've learned in a simple way. And I'll let you all kind of explore some of these. I'll kind of move on. But I think one thing that I want to maybe share in the context of user research too is like this level and concept of altitude. So like some of the to use like Diana's example, some of the things are like as a user. When I'm using the app in this way, I want X to happen, or I want to be able to Y, and that is a very specific, moment in an app, right? In a person's life, right? And where I think when we talk about jobs to be done, user stories, personas, and like when to use which, it's helpful to think about like what level of altitude we're trying to design for. And so. And then my last little inspirational tip here is low fidelity design gets high level feedback, and high fidelity designs gets low level feedback. Maybe that's something worth bringing up when we have a conversation about, getting open contributions from folks, making sure that we start with like low fidelity design to make sure we solve the problem before going to high fidelity. So, and by the way, feel free to like raise your hand and stop me, because again, this is a little bit of a smattering. I think, yeah, if there's anything here that's interesting that that we want to stop on, I'm happy to do so. So on the jobs to be done note, I think I made a comment in Slack that like sometimes this can get into just like circular and semantic debates and discussions. And I think like jobs to be done, for those who aren't familiar, is like a outcome driven innovation. Like it's like a toolkit to try and identify areas for innovation. And so the famous example, this is like kind of developed by Clay Christensen at Harvard, and this guy named Teddy Hall. And it's the idea, like the famous one is this milkshake, right? Where they basically, or maybe there's an even more famous one which gets it across. What jobs to be done says is people don't want to buy a drill, they want to buy a 1/4 inch hole. And so like they're only hiring the drill to make the 1/4 inch hole. And so if you understand what their aspiration is to have a 1/4 inch hole, you might find a better thing that they could hire to make a 1/4 inch hole than a drill. And you can see I'm already kind of going to a funny semantic, just like, heady debate. So there's a lot to potentially be discussed there. I think it's a super interesting space, and have been part of a sort of a large scale jobs to be done project, which like I would sort of have a lot of positive and positive things and criticisms to talk about. But anyway, the net is like, I think it's really interesting when you're kind of getting into like these aspirational, like what do you want, these high level, like what do you want your product to do in somebody's life? And maybe it's a little bit too heavy powered for like, I want this app to do X and Y and Z. One thing that I really liked about that sits kind of within the jobs to be done space is this this sort of unmet needs graph, for lack of a better term. And Christoph, I think this goes a little bit to what you're talking about regarding like adding metadata to user stories. So the way in which you get to this chart, what you're looking at is you're looking at the importance of something and the user satisfaction with that thing. And so imagine every one of these dots being a user story, and doing a survey or looking at analytics for that you have and saying, how important is it for you to know what the Bitcoin price is, right? And you'd say, oh, well, it's extremely important. I look at it every 5 minutes. I'm kidding. And then you say, how satisfied are you with your ability, if you're doing a survey, for instance, with your ability to find or locate or know the Bitcoin price? And if it's really important and you're not satisfied, like these are the things you need to focus on first, right? And then this little guy up here it's important and you're satisfied, like nice job. That's a really good experience, right? So this I always thought was really interesting way to view and prioritize based on like a user centric way, like what your user stories or your scenarios or your whatever are. So a couple things. I'm not going to look at everything here because I do want to just kind of like get to a stopping point and then chat. But when you're thinking about like, I would say this is maybe more designing a new product or feature. But I really, there's like a double diamond, which many of us are probably familiar with. And this is kind of an iteration on that of say like, when we're thinking about using, whether it's like developing user stories or building personas or running sort of jobs to be done, it's like we only, in my experience, want to learn enough to make something and to put in front of somebody, to learn more to make something, to learn more to make it right, and to like iterate until we either push live or it even goes beyond pushing live, right? And Mo and I were just talking a little earlier about like I'm really wanting to bring some of this into, especially with like Yala, we're making some enhancements to the Bitcoin Beach wallet, and I want to be able to have these like user testing as well as like analytics kind of go together in my mind to really only do enough testing and research to move forward, and so that's kind of maybe for another day. So this I'm gonna what Diana showed, I would say, is a tactical view at what you would get maybe like out to the right hand of this chart, right? Which is like, hey, we have a thing, we know what the problem is, we know who it's for, and you know, we need to design a solution on a feature level or interaction level. What you're looking at here is like if you went to the other side of that spectrum to say like, we don't know anything, right? We have undefined problems and unknown solutions, and so we need like this to start with inquiry. And what you're looking at is for like a pretty big. So like I would almost imagine if we were doing something for let's use like a Kraken or something for an example, where it's like, okay, Kraken's a huge company with many different users, with many different like business units and apps, and we want to approach and say, okay, we want to build a user research capability that puts us on a path toward like continuous iteration and evolution. And so service blueprinting to me is like a really nice tool for that. And what you see here, where like a program map is like, you know, maybe goes from left to right along a customer journey. Like, okay, how do we attract customers, and how do we onboard customers, and how do we, what about when they're customers and they're using our app versus, you know, these stages, and then a blueprint drills a little bit or a lot potentially deeper. And you, with service blueprinting, you can almost become a mechanic for a customer experience. And so, like, imagine this section. I think you can see my mouse. Like, I'm hovering over is like a broken onboarding experience where you've identified that you're losing like 20% of your people because there's a 2-day waiting period to like approve their account or something. And like you could actually cut this out and then like redesign that experience. And like this, like service design is one of the things I'm most excited about. And I was telling Mo, and we may want to have a whole call on it, because it is end to end. So like a customer journey, it goes from like the very first time you touch a customer to when, you know, to the end. It's surface to core, which means it's like the yellow is what the customer sees and the pink is what the business does. And so it like bridges the gap between like the customer and the business. And it's cross channel. So it's like from app to email to phone to in person to et cetera. So especially think about like in Bitcoin, we're like scanning invoices at a you know, pupusa shop or something. Like, how do you document that experience? Like, I would do it with service design. And this was for like this example is for like a massive technology company. And so I think it's like it's just massively scalable to zoom in and out of experiences and like iterate and design for them. So we have some time. Okay, so I'll scroll down a little bit. This is actually the same thing you just looked at. I probably should have went here first because it's like less of an eye chart. But the idea is like a program app. If you're, you know, if you're a company that has many different like many products, apps, things, and you're just trying to get a handle on like your research capability and team, like you can use a program app to really focus and say like, okay, this little square needs a blueprint. Okay. Then within the blueprint, we've identified how might we and this is actually a real example, how might we speed up the NDA process? And then you find that in the customer experience, and you say, let's make a better NDA process. This is where I think a lot of like user flows, user stories, personas, like can sit, right? Because different people experience like an interaction in different ways with their own experience. And so, and then like the sprint, in my experience here, I'll talk about actually why we're here today, but like in my experience, the user story has been most effective of a tool as you get towards the like development team, right? Because, and Diana covered this a little bit, which is like, it's a tool that everybody can use to say, okay, it sets context. I know who I'm building something for. I know what they're trying to do. I know what there's acceptance criteria around it, right? So it's like it's a nice like handoff tool. It can be sorted, it can be prioritized and stuff like that. And so I would say like in my experience thinking about the tools, the toolkits that we have, like a jobs to be done would exist maybe more on the left hand side of here of like, okay, the problems or the solutions are more undefined and you're really more exploratory. It's a little harder, longer walk for a ham sandwich, is that what they say? And then on the right hand side, it's like, oh, you use your stories that can be very specific. And then in the middle, you've got this idea to me about like personas and some other empathy maps and some other tools that try and like find a solution to a problem that you've seen. So that's one thing that that I had built in the past and kind of like worked with people on. So again, this is kind of like from my experience, but and I've like grabbed this from like various documents, right? You see none of this stuff matches. But these are things that I would love to, you know, work with anybody on this call or on in Bitcoin design on like on hammering out in like a maybe a for in a Bitcoin design way. I will cruise through like double design, double diamond. This is the same thing. You'll see like my biggest like diagnosing the problem and developing the solution is like to me is like a gradient, right? Like, I think that we use different tools. So like a persona, jobs to be done, service design, user stories even. Like to me, these are tools or tool bags, right? Like they have tools within them, their toolkits. It's almost like you got like a plumber's toolbox versus an electrician toolbox. They might both have like wrenches in there, but you could kind of get to where you want to go with any of them. But sometimes there's like one tool that's better than others for like the altitude in which you're working. As an example, this job map. So this is like a mashup of like jobs to be done. You can see there's like a user story here. As a person who's maturing into Medicare coverage, I want to be able to choose, afford, and receive the care I need. So like this is a lot, right? That's not something you can hand off and build. I don't think this is necessarily a super important or effective use of a user story. But within here, every one of these blue squares is something that was that is sort of buildable maybe at a user story level and was used to or prioritized via a survey like the one I showed to identify like what the unmet needs are. This was like for building like a Medicare product. And so there's a lot there. I won't go into deep. Mo and I briefly talked this morning about user journeys or customer journeys. And I think like I just wanted to show this because there, as I mentioned before, there's times when you can just go spend way too much time doing research and kind of get lost in like what the purpose of it all is before you like come back and like build something. And like so you think about like somebody's life, right? Like I want to be a better dad, and right, like this works for customer journey or jobs to be done. What does that mean? Like, well, there's like on a daily basis, what do I do, and what's my pain? And like when I go to the store, what do I do, and what's my pain? And like when I'm standing in the automated checkout line and I'm holding a chives that I don't know how to scan because I don't have a barcode. Like, what do those look like, right? So like the level of altitude is so important to align on before you start like thinking about like building a service blueprint or building a customer journey or so I just wanted to kind of get that across because we've definitely gotten lost before being like, wait a minute, we just spent a week, 2 weeks doing something that's like maybe tangential or less related to the specific thing we're trying to solve. Here's just another example that I thought was really interesting. This is from a Forrester report. And so this is thinking about using analytics, like wiring your analytics to align to your customer journey stages, right? So think about like a sales funnel, but really for like or product diagnostics to say like, okay, are people getting from signing up to making an appointment, or is there drop off? Why is there drop off? Right? Like we can use our research toolkit to like identify these things, to prioritize these things, and to evaluate our progress on them. So that's that. I think I'm almost done. I guess my last piece here is kind of maybe to sum up how I think about how I'm thinking about user research. And I didn't quite finish. There we go. So I think about it as like an underlying capability of, and the things that you do like need to be captured out, if possible, if reasonable. Like a lot of it needs to be captured outside of a specific project and then updated as you build projects, right? So you're building really a capability versus like you're doing the research like in a vacuum or like with a very, very narrow mind. So like you can think about like I don't know, like a Super Mario game. I'm probably dating myself. Some like video game where like the map like opens and comes out of the fog like as you explore more of the map. Like I see that as like your capability, which is like you're learning, and then the people that come behind you can really see like the map you've built over time. And then, like I mentioned with journey analytics, like wiring that up so that it's not just about UX research or testing. It's also like about, you know, like marrying that with analytics from the live environments, because that's really your analytics and measurement is going to help you diagnose like that there is a problem, and then your UX research is going to help you figure out like, okay, well, what is it, which one's important, and stuff like that. And then so the difference would be, and I've done all of these, like not this where you're like doing new types, depths, sort of independent research that doesn't ever kind of move or get shared from one project to the next, or what I guess you call like big design up front or whatever, which is like try and do all the research, take forever before you actually build something, and then try and like use that and go back to it over time. I've seen research that sits in people's like inboxes or drive folders for like a year, and people are like, hey, remember we did research, we should go like check it out. It's like, yeah, that's not the way, right? So anyway, I'm gonna, I think, be quiet and take a breath and let anybody see if like anything is interesting or you want to go back to anything or hear or share anything. Thank you for the time.
I enjoyed that. Thanks for sharing. I love the use of jobs to be done and identifying unmet needs in research. And I don't get a chance to do this very often in my work, but I have recently done a project which involved a jobs to be done study for a Web3 wallet, and involved it interviewed about 35 people and identified the original intention. What the demand from the business was, we want personas, but what came out of the research activity was these unmet needs, 6 of them, which were actually applicable to every single person, just to varying degrees. So instead of then getting the company to, you know, have these nice persona artifacts that they could use or abuse, they instead got this hit list prioritized of things you need to solve for, that by solving for them will actually affect all of these people, not just, you know, I did design for this persona group or this persona group. So that was, it was a rewarding activity, and I think valuable. It was good to see the company lap it up.
That's awesome. I've and I think I shared in the Slack on last week's video. There's an article from Jared Spool which talks about like the usefulness within a persona is in the scenario, not in the like thing that we often jam in, which is like their salary and their like, you know, where they live, right? It's like, here's a person who has no time. Like, who has no time? I don't know. Someone that's busy at work, a mother like flying with 2 kids. Like, time, like reduce time, right? And so like tapping into like human needs, like personas are, again, like I would never like trash them. I think that they're useful to build empathy, get in the head of somebody you're designing for, and I think they do bring you interesting ideas for features or enhancements or whatever. But yeah, the scenario or like yeah, they're extremely actionable.
And then everybody, the challenge that we did end up producing some personas out of hot demand from the organization, but then the challenge everyone wants to know is, well, how big are those markets, for us? And you talked about using analytics and other metrics as very important cornerstones, as like a bedrock for doing this more qualitative research. But if your product intentionally captures no data about users, then that's really challenging to do. So we have to find other sources of information to infer that.
If it's okay, I would like to go on a tangent here regarding analytics, and would like to know what you guys think of how the industry will change over time when it comes to GDPR. I have seen at work a lot of worry when it comes to tracking data of users, and yeah, sometimes it feels like it's the way that things are going is like it's not going to be really the companies are not going to be able to track so much data as they are using right now. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think analytics has been a shit show for the past 15 years. So I'm like happy to see that like people will not be able like collect or like I don't know, like it was like it's like abuse, and now you have like Apple being like, hey, we're like use a browser that doesn't track you. It's like, well, why did you sell my data in the first place?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm like excited for that, because I think that as designers you go, okay, well I'm gonna like speak in user stories for like just the theme of the meeting. Like as a designer, like I want to know what is wrong with my app, or like and last week, is it Jalissa? I don't remember specifically how to say her name, but from Amber, I think had some interesting interactions, which was like looking for user feedback, right? And so I think like giving the and me giving an example actually, in the before coming to Bitcoin, before working on Bitcoin, I worked at a cancer for a cancer center, and we were designing a website. And the big hot thing is personalization, right? Oh, you personalize things for people, like put all their data together, and then you can like show them exactly what you need. And I'm like, yeah, well, you could also probably diagnose somebody with cancer based on their search history. So you got to be really careful. And I know I'm like being hyperbolic there, but one of the things we wanted to try and design was actually opt-in personalization, which means here's an empty gray box. We are not tracking you. If you would like us to use your browsing history to try and recommend things that we think would be most relevant to you, then you opt into it. And so you're you're putting the user in control of their data versus like hiding these weird, like, do you want to accept these or those, or which cookies do you want? Like you're actually, there's a great video by Tristan Harris, who was on Google's team back in the day, and who's like all up in like this idea of design ethics, where he talks about, I think I wrote about this, like digital advertising has like ruined our world. And it was like a blog post or a Substack post I wrote, but basically the quote in there was, like we have like humans will never win against AI. If you let this run out, right? Like and analytics get captured and used, it's just not a good story for anybody. So I think as designers, it's important for us to push back on that.
Yeah, maybe Lightning microtransactions will be able to help companies build a sustainable, reasonable, honest business models that are going to prevent this kind of things happening over and over again, right?
What brought me to Bitcoin personally, or like hooked me, was the incentive alignment. And like if you can create a system that does not put the power and incentives, at odds with our users. I think that's a powerful dynamic.
Just practically speaking, I've seen data abused a ton, and many situations where people collect tons of data, but then pretty much nobody actually understands it, and they don't realize what's wrong with the data and how I actually use it. So I feel like there's just been too much hype about it, and it needs to be data informed, not data driven, and take it with a grain of salt, and leave room for squishy decisions based on intuition and understanding and all of this stuff.
And I feel sorry, go on, Christoph.
My next thought just slipped my mind, so please go ahead.
Oh man.
Not because of you, I already lost it before.
Okay, good. No, but I feel like another interesting call in the UX research thing would be actually how, and that could be another completely different call because we're running at the end of the hour now, is how do you actually present these findings from your research in such a way that they're actually really actionable for the team? How do you actually bridge that gap? I'm really interested in that because it feels like if the research is actually done and it's not presented in the right way, then how the team actually takes that on is going to be, it's difficult for them, so it needs to be as easy as possible.
Yeah, that would have been, sorry, please go ahead.
No, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been one of my questions too. I look at all these diagrams, and one question I have is, who are they for and when are they used? I look at, and let me know if you see this differently. I see a lot of these diagrams and sometimes personas and maps as kind of, a lot of stuff is just throwaway artifacts. They're very relevant in that moment to get a group of people that need to be taken along and get on the same page and communicated certain information on the same path. But then you move on, you take something else. You move on to the next artifact and on, and maybe you'll bring it back sometime. But to a certain point, it's like they have a very temporary use. You could make a different argument for something like this global service map, where when everybody zooms out, we should all see the same thing. And then once we go down, maybe there are artifacts that have a longer shelf life. But then I'm sure it's very different, like stuff as you know, with big companies and agencies, stuff you present to creative teams is different than your business people and CEOs, and like you need to talk very differently too. And looking at all these artifacts, I was just wondering what are everybody else's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen, I was on like a warpath against, so I've seen like 8-foot wide, like high fidelity design, the journey maps, which are like literally the only purpose is to like paste them on like an executive's wall so they can be like proud of the, money that they spent to, right, like to know the customer, which I'm a little tongue in cheek because I think a lot of the value, maybe most of the value, is in the process of like, right, having a framework within you can like get to know your sort of people who you're designing for and what the product is doing or not doing. But this is why, Christoph, I personally have landed at service design as like the step, because I mean, it's pretty to me, but it's not like high, like it's not like there's not like trees and like people biking, right? Like, like it's very functional. And it's actually like interchangeable in that like you can add a interaction in a service. You can open it up. Like I said, like I see it almost like you're a mechanic. It's like a system, and you can operate within it. So that's my view, is that a service blueprint is a customer journey, like, but better and more useful over time.
Yeah, because one of the dangers I see, and I think that was discussed with personas, is, and just like with high fidelity wireframes, you just get lost in the details. You worry too much about that person's haircut, or like the rounded corners of the button. So and where really you should use them as like a guideline and then move on, or focus on something else. And I feel like it's so tempting to take the artifact and just expect it to answer all your questions.
This has been really interesting. I'm sorry I have to jump now, everybody, but thanks for having me. I'll be here again, no doubt.
It will be lovely to have you here.
Bye.
Bye.
So I also thought about what to do with those artifacts, and the way I see it, the best way to do it, to manage the artifacts in the long run, is to make these flowcharts where you have some information and then some screens, and then they're all connected to components that are live and can be updated. And that way you can go back to the flows and check every time you make amendments to components. It can be a living system if you make a flowchart out of it. I think
that's a dream. I would love to, like, I love that idea. And like, yeah, I would love it to be not something that is distinct. Like, here's where you identify and solve the problem, and then here's where you design it. But like, instead, like, bring things together. Yeah.
Also, you will have, if working through a flowchart, you will have some screens, some edge cases, and then you can identify need for more screens and more states. You design those, and you have another branch that goes